hear me okay? Is that coming through?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, good morning. Did you turn the video on too? It's on? Okay, good morning and thanks for your patience once again. My name is Jim Ryan and thanks for inviting me. This lovely lady helping me, as Ken pointed out, is my worthy assistant Faith. She is my computer professional, and as you know, if you need anything done, hire a teenager because they know everything for computers. She comes a couple of hours a week, and I try to come up with work, and for 2 hours she's all done in 30 minutes, so I have to find more for her. So I'm a full quadriplegic, and a quadriplegic is someone who's lost use of their arms and legs, either partial or full use. So you'll see a lot of quadriplegics and they can push themselves in a wheelchair. They have partial use of their arms. So you think they're only a paraplegic, but in fact they're a quad. Faith, can you just turn down the volume a bit on the microphone? I'm just getting some feedback. Yeah, just turn that one down a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah.
Is that better, guys? There we go, thank you. So, unfortunately, I'm a full quadriplegic, so I really don't have any use at all of my arms and legs. I can move my legs. I don't know if you can see, I can move my legs a little bit. I can wiggle my fingers, but I really don't have any useful movement at all. I have movement from my shoulders and up, so I drive my wheelchair with my head. And it's a pretty fancy wheelchair. It hooks to my iPhone, so I can do texts and emails and phone calls. And I actually have a remote control I hook to my chair, and I can run my TV and my lights, so it's pretty good. So, long story short, is Sandra's husband, Steve, after my accident, got in contact with the Rick Hansen Foundation, and I've met Rick a couple of times, just an incredible person, and because of Steve, I am now an ambassador for the Rick Hansen Foundation. So my presentation today, I'm going to have to turn my chair so I can see a bit. Just a moment. A lot of times we set up the computer so I could see the screen, but I blew that today. So for Canada 150, the 150th anniversary, Rick and his foundation have set up a Busting Barriers program. So that's what I'm presenting today. So it's a signature 150 initiative, and what I'll talk about is inclusive and accessible areas in Chilliwack, and I'll say this right now, and I'm going to say it several times. We live in a great city.
Yes, we do.
This city has worked at removing barriers for me and people like me, like you wouldn't believe. And I'll give you a couple of examples as we go. And we travel around, Isabel and I, my wife Isabel and I, and it is pretty simple to move in this city for someone like me. So congratulate yourselves, because we sure picked a great place to live. And I'll tell you a bit about my story and some barrier buster projects. Go ahead, please. So Rick Hansen, I'm sure you all know who he is. He rode his wheelchair around the world. It took him 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days to complete. And it was May 22nd of 1987, so 30 years and a month ago today, actually, that he completed his tour. So very famous, as you know. And what he found, of all the barriers, so he's dedicated his foundation to creating a world that is accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities. So it's not just people in wheelchairs, it's people with hearing, sight problems, and the disabilities that we can't see. So his vision, an inclusive world where people with disabilities are living life to their full potential. And again, I'm pretty fortunate because I live in a great city, and my family and friends and neighbors have reached out so much to me that I feel I've been given the opportunity to try to live my life to my full potential. So the 150 initiative is to improve physical accessibility of communities. And through the foundation and the federal government, you can get a barrier buster toolkit for communities, and a community project can get up to $30,000 to assist in removing barriers. Is it gonna work? Here we go, it's working.
When I had my injury in 1973, I was pretty much told not to expect very much living with the kind of disability that I was going to face. And you know what's interesting is that at first I really started to believe that because of my own attitude about what life with a disability was all about.
After I had my accident, I definitely had to get used to how other people perceived me. It wasn't just how I perceived myself anymore, but how my friends and family and the general public looked at me.
I did face teasing and that kind of thing where, you know, you're called Captain Hook or something like that, which is never a fun thing to go through. But most of the things were just barriers that I put on myself.
Of course, you face people with different attitudes about blindness. Some of them, they think that, you know, blind people are in a certain closed black spot that they don't know anything about the world around them.
One of my favourite quotes from one of the students that we work with who's in a chair is, "I want people to see me for me, not the chair."
One of the biggest barriers that people with disabilities face is accessibility. And if we look at the built environment, it isn't just getting into a building for people who are in wheelchairs. There's people who have mobility challenges, people who have visual or hearing challenges, people who have some cognitive challenges in recognizing signage and location. And it's not just people who have those existing permanent disabilities, it's also those who have perhaps a temporary injury.
What we're trying to do is move the world on from a medical model of disability, where what we think about disability is this person's in a chair, this person has a spinal cord injury, this person is deaf. But that's not disability. A disability only arises when you set that alongside a barrier. And so what we want to do is remove those barriers so that being in a chair is no longer a disability because it doesn't hold you back from doing anything.
When we left on our journey on the Man in Motion World Tour, it seemed like an impossible dream. Who would have ever have imagined that by starting that journey that it would turn from a Man in Motion journey to a global movement filled by many in motion who are driving towards something that's far bigger than any individual, and that together anything's possible.
What I really want from the community is for them to recognize that we are equals and that they shouldn't look down on us.
It's really important that everybody gets an equal chance to take part in the things we do. Volunteering with the foundation, making donation, or thinking about your own attitudes and your own perceptions, and considering disability and accessibility in everything you do. Those are all things that people can do to change the lives of people with disabilities.
I see today more than ever that the original dream of the Man in Motion Tour is possible. We can't get there on our own. The solution that we've defined is a big, incredible challenge. It's going to require millions and millions of people getting engaged. It's going to take their time, their talent, and yes, some of the resources that are necessary for us to be able to turn this dream into a reality. We need your help, and we can't get there alone.
So there you go, that's actually quite a good video, and I'm really glad it worked. I'll get 50% result on that. So there I am, again through Sandra's husband Steve, got in touch with the Rick Hansen Foundation, and he's visited me twice and he's phoned me a couple of times. It's really quite something. It's in the hospital. I was still on a respirator at the time. I was actually quite sick, and I'll tell you a bit of that story. But he phoned Isabel, his assistant, and said, "Rick's coming tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and the nursing staff got me up and got me cleaned up, and we really had a good visit. He's really quite a gentleman." Go ahead. So, does everybody know what the We Foundation, Meet a We is? And that's what the Craig Kielburger Save the Children Foundation. And they go around and they fill something like Rogers Arena with 17,000 teenagers, and they bring in speakers and try to motivate people. So that young lady is the daughter of a good friend of mine named Jessica, and she worked for the We Foundation. And she saw Rick roll by and said, "Do you know Jim Ryan?" I says, "Yeah, I know Jim Ryan. Can we do a photo?" So there she quickly made up this sign And there's Rick and Jessica at the Wee Day. And then you'll recognize this next guy, Chris Hadfield. Chris and I actually went to school together. We were in the Air Force together. So she saw Chris Hadfield and said, "Do you know Jeremiah?" I says, "Of course, yeah." So they quickly did a photo too, so that's really good. That's really nice of them to take a moment to remember me. So this is where I tell my story. Our lives changed on March 30th of last year, so I'm a brand new quad, just over a year and a few months. Isabel and I were in Hawaii and we're at the beach and we just went in the water to cool off. I mean, we're not big swimmers or anything. And the waves weren't huge, but they were big that day. And we're just in the water and we're coming back to come onto the beach. And as always, you would face the waves, you never turn your back on the ocean. And we're pretty close to the beach, really quite shallow. And the last wave came and I said to Isabel, "Let's dive through the wave here and then we'll get out." And when we dove, I got twisted around by the wave and it drove my head into the sand. And so I had sort of a whiplash, and all I could think of is, I'm going to have a headache tonight. So I'm floating just below the surface, face down. I said, "I'll just swim to the surface and we'll carry on." Well, I couldn't move. I had been instantly paralyzed. So now I'm floating below the water, under the water, trying to figure out how I'm going to get to the surface. Now, my job, I'm an airline pilot for WestJet, been flying for almost 40 years. And it might be my attitude or it might be my training, but you never stop trying. In an airplane, when you have an issue, you can't pull over and fix it. You have to keep working the problem, as they say. So I'm under the water, can't move, and I'm trying to figure out a way to move, and this isn't working. And then the air started coming out of my lungs. I could see the bubbles coming up beside my mouth, and I could feel the water going in. And I'm thinking, this is what it's like to drown. And all I could think of, and I know it sounds terrible, is at least I'm not burning to death, which just seems to be a fear of mine. So I'm drowning. And again, I'm not panicking for whatever reason. It was the strangest thing. But I knew things were not going well, to coin a phrase. And the last thing I remember is Isabel pulling my head out of the water and not yelling, but screaming help. And at that point, effectively, I died. So I was gone, and that's all I remember. And the current president of the United States says he needs to make America great again, but in our experience, America and Americans are great, because when Isabel screamed, everybody on the beach sprang into action. People helped Isabel get me out of the water. They started CPR. They ran and got the lifeguards. 5 lifeguards came running, did something called extreme CPR, which I think is faster rate, harder rate. And they worked hard at me, and they say only 4% of people who get CPR in a non-hospital environment survive. So 1 chance in 25, and I'm not one person. I'm pretty happy about that. Anyways, I started coming around, and they said to Isabel, "Say something, I think he's coming back." And Isabel, being the romantic that she is, said, "The story isn't over yet, you owe me 30 more years." Well, it worked, and here I am. And I don't remember any of this, and they strapped me to the board and had to drag me over the cliffs, back to the ambulance, and into the hospital. And they got to the hospital, and the pastors met Isabel, and apparently I wasn't supposed to make it. And I always say, well, I never got the memo that I was supposed to die. So I just sort of kept going, and I never really realized how sick I was until I looked back at the photos, and I'll show you a bit of that in a moment, and how far it was. I was on a ventilator for over 4 months, so nothing went through my mouth, air, water, food, everything was pumped in. But healthcare in Canada is phenomenal. We all complain, but I'll just tell you, the people that dealt with me treated me dignity and respect, and worked really hard to make me well. So here I am today. I still don't really move, but my head works more or less right there, sometimes more, sometimes less, and we carry on. So that's a very brief story of how I became a quadriplegic. And away we go. Next slide. Thanks, Faith. I have to turn a little bit. Sorry about that. Okay, so Rick plan for Canada 150 is busting barriers. And we live over by Twin Rinks, and we like to roll around. And I don't know if you've been to the park at Twin Rinks, but it's these nice gravel trails. You can see the arenas in the distance there. And it's a great place because I could just roll over in my wheelchair and we can go for a walk in the park. Well, I couldn't get into the park. If you could see in the two pictures on the right, the curbs there are too big for my wheelchair. I can do about 2 inches and they're about 6 inches. Even though that they're sort of curved, my chances of toppling over are very high. So I couldn't get in, which is disappointing. I had to go all the way around to the park and not go in the driveway. It was pretty frustrating. So I was doing a presentation to one of the Rotary groups, and they were quite surprised that I couldn't get in. And one of the city councilors, I could say his name, Sam Waddington, was there. And he says, we're gonna fix that. So about a month later, I got a phone call from the city, and please come in and we'd like to deal with this. And they have a fund, and they were really interested in making it work. And about a month after that, go ahead, I had 2 new curb cuts and I could just roll in and out of the park. And I just want to say, Emil Anderson Construction does a lot of work for the city. They donated their time and equipment. The concrete company, whose name I don't know, donated the concrete for free. And the city workers on their time off came and did all the landscaping. So even though there's a fund for this, it didn't cost a cent, and everybody really stepped forward. So I'm really happy. So these are my curb cuts, and we use it quite often. It's just wonderful for me because I can get in and out of the park now. This is my van, and this is a huge barrier buster for Isabel and I because we go out. And this is in a handicap spot, which looks really great and works really well. But go to the next picture, Faith. There's a handicap spot there. Just do the next one. If there's a car parked beside me, I can't get out, right? So it's a bit of a barrier for me. But again, we're pretty fortunate. Cottonwood Mall has some really good loading and unloading areas and automatic doors. And I just, they have the electric eye there, which works really well for me. If there's a button to push, can't push it, so I have to sit and wait. And we have time for a quick story, right? We were in Richmond at the Richmond Mall, and it was raining quite hard, so Isabel got out to get the van, and I was sort of watching for her, and I was looking for someone to open the doors to let me in, to let me out. And there was only people, there was these 4 young guys in their leather coats, tattoos, being tough, we know the people. And I thought, well, they're the only people, so I saw Isabel drive up. I said, well, I'll give it a try. Hey guys, can you give me a hand? I have to get out to the van. They were the nicest guys ever. They couldn't do enough. Sir, let me help you. Let me open the doors. Let me help you down the ramp. I don't want you to get wet. I'm sorry about that. So it was just excellent how much people stepped forward and helped me like that. And that's just a small example of how good people are. Go ahead. So what Rick is encouraging is to take on a barrier buster project. Help remove physical barriers in community spaces and create awareness about accessibility. This town is great, and I keep trying to find barriers, but as I wander around, I'm pretty lucky. Canadians are encouraged to identify accessibility barriers in public spaces and apply for funding. So there is funding available this year. I put this in because this is incredible. This is up at Cultus Lake at Main Beach, and they put this trail in. It's sort of rubber tires, so it's really soft. In full disclosure, when I saw this 2 years ago, I thought, who's going to use this? Well, guess what? We go up up there, we've been up there several times, and I can roll right down to the beach. It is really, really nice. For someone like me, it's really handy. Again, this is Watson Park, as I use this because it's close to my house. You can see in the left picture to the left is a new library, and this is their brand new playground. But someone like me, I can't get it. So if I had children or grandchildren at that age, I could not go and play with them on the playground. Now, it's not necessary, I'm just pointing this out. And if you know a young person who has children in a playground like this is perhaps a barrier that could be busted. And the next slide shows, this is Chehalis Park, which is in Garrison, sorry, I forgot the name, Garrison. And this park, I don't know why they did it, but has all that nice flooring, whatever they call it, base, so you can roll around. So if there was someone like me with children, I could take them there and be with them and play with them. So that's a barrier buster. Now, we don't need all our parks like that, but again, as you move around through the city and you see a person with children can't get in the park, that would be a wonderful barrier to bust. Before I show my last slide, I'm just going to do some self-advertising. As an ambassador, I just wanted to point out some of the information. I have actually business cards under my hand if anybody's interested. So there's the Rick Hansen website, my email. We have a Facebook page. So when I was injured, Isabel was getting lots of phone calls, so our son Daniel said, well, I'll just quickly set up a Facebook page for our family and friends so they can keep track, and then Isabel doesn't have to say the same thing over and over again. So we set up this Facebook page and sort of told our friends, and now we have 2,700 people following our story. So there's the address, right? If you just type Facebook and type Jim Ryan's Recovery, you can see the page. And we add probably a couple of times, 3 times a week right now, right?
Yeah, it used to be
Every day.
every day because
But-
things were
but
changing,
yeah.
and now about 3 times a week for
And
sure.
there's lots of stuff to
always
add,
something
and
happening.
I have a YouTube. We tape all my presentations, we put them on my YouTube channel, which I haven't put up there, and just to keep track of what I do. And then our son Daniel set up a blog, myquadriplegic.life, and we try to put a story, a bit of a longer story. So there's different things that have happened to me. The first time I tried to use the elevator by myself, I got stuck for quite a while. It's a long story.
The interesting part about that
Yeah.
blog is that it comes not only from Jim, it
Yeah.
really is the experience of the family. So the stories
Yeah.
will come from different perspectives, and it's all different things that have touched us in one way or another. We're not all touched by the same things. We don't experience things the same way. And so that is a really neat project because even myself, because I was with Jim for 10.5 months, day in, day out, you lose track of what your children are experiencing, how they perceive something, and how they went through this tragedy in a different way. So you'll see funny stories, you'll see very sad stories, and you'll see some moving stories. And anybody can say anything as long as it's true and they feel the need to write it. So,
And it just helps us to, if people want to hear some of the stories of everything we've been through, so it's actually been quite well received. And then finally, this is Rick's website, Access for All. And it's amazing the work that he's done in his foundation. It's really quite something as I get to know them and all the stuff they've done. It's been really good.
Jim, I see we've set up one of these barriers for you.
Oh, no,
No,
am I caught on?
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
straighten it up for you.
Oh, okay, because I keep turning back and
Yes.
forth. Is it caught in my wheels there?
You just
Yeah,
move
so
back.
turn that way and you'll go over.
Am I clear?
Go back a bit more.
we'll get that fixed next month.
Okay, that's all right, as long as we clear it at the end. Excuse me. So I'll just show you my last barrier. It's interesting, you know, before I was injured, and I think I speak for a lot of us, you see someone in a wheelchair, you look away, not because you're impolite, but you don't want to be accused of staring. Right? And I was guilty of that. And something that always drove Isabel a bit nuts is we'd go for a walk and I'd say hello to everyone, and she'd go, "Do you know them?" I said, "No, not at all. I'm just being polite." Sort of the way I am. And but people in a wheelchair, I wouldn't do that. And I look back and go, man, was I ever stupid? Now, a lot of us have different handicaps. A lot of us, like me, wear glasses. Some of us wear hearing aids. Some of us should be wearing hearing aids. They're the ones going, "What did he say?" But I won't go down that road. You see how many handicap stickers there are in cars now. And so a lot of us have disabilities, canes, walkers, and some of us have wheelchairs. And we see the disability, we don't see the person. So if you see me or someone like me, please say hi. If you want to ask me questions, please feel free. Young kids are the greatest. They have no qualms. And what happened to you? Tell me about your wheelchair. That's pretty cool. I mean, don't hesitate to ask. I have a pretty cool wheelchair, and a lot of the therapists love coming over to see it and discuss all my equipment and how I bust barriers. So my biggest barrier is people see the chair and not me. And if you see me, please see me and not the chair. So once again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it and allowing me to speak to you. Thank you. Here's my very good friend and assistant, Margaret. She's been very good helping me. She's one of my drivers all the time.
So, Isabel, you come up to me, because none of this happens without the other partner. In a situation like this, it takes two to make a living possible. So, not only do I want to thank you, Jim, but I want to thank you too, Isabel, for coming today and just letting us know what it is like to be in a wheelchair and busting the barriers through Rick Hansen's association. It's awesome.
Thank you very much.
So this is really nice. Being here today, Jim, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Yeah.
Do you want to take any questions?
Sure. Questions? Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Jim? Yes, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, Jim, I was wondering, because you're confined to a wheelchair and the lack of exercise, have you had to readjust your eating habits and likes and dislikes?
So yeah, it's a good question. It's a bit funny. Again, I don't have any feeling. They've done surgery on me without any anesthetic, and I don't feel hungry or full. But it's fortunate I can't graze. I can't walk by and pick up a cookie. If the bowl of potato chips are on the counter, I can just look at them. I'm like a dog, right? You just wait for somebody to walk by. So I don't think I eat near as much as I did, and I think it would be a problem if I ate too much. So that part is true. Exercise, I obviously don't get any. So I've lost a lot of muscle mass. You don't realize it, but you move in your chairs a lot. And it's just natural, and it keeps the sores and everything. I can't do that, so my chair, I will go like this. And I'm supposed to do this about every half an hour, every 20 minutes, and I'll just adjust my weight, and that will shift things around so I do have a couple of sores right now. We've done quite a bit of traveling. 2 of our children graduated from university this year, so we went to the graduations. So I have to be really careful that way. I can put my feet up, I can recline, I've got all kinds of choices. I have my seat raised so everybody can see me, but eating, I eat until they stop feeding me. If that makes sense.
Jim, is that a customized creation, that chair?
The wheelchair, yeah.
Each and every, I mean, it's so sophisticated. I can't imagine that that's the kind of thing that is anywhere near mass produced. You must have had it specially made for you, did you? Or
Every wheelchair for each person is different because we all have different shapes and different needs. So I was at the GF Strong Rehab Center in Vancouver. It's one of the top 2 in Canada. Depending on who you talk to, it's either 1 or 2. So if you're in Toronto, it's 2. If you're in Vancouver, it's 1. But the therapists there are incredible, and I married a therapist, and she's incredible too. So I'm going to say that. But we tried different seat cushions, different backs, different armrests, everything. I tried, some guys drive their chair with one of these, a sip and puff, and I use a head array, and I tried 3 different head arrays before settling on this. And again, I'm very fortunate. I went to military college, I was in the Air Force, and 35 years ago I graduated, and when my classmates heard I was injured, they raised almost enough money for my wheelchair 35 years later. And to put it in perspective, this is the most expensive vehicle Isabel and I have ever bought. So it is a very specialized wheelchair, and I was fortunate that friends raised money that I even have hazard lights and a horn.
So to elaborate a little bit,
Yeah.
what you do is you look, there's 3 things that you have to pick and 1,000 options within each 3 things. So there's the base, and the base can be 6, mid-wheel, front wheel, rear wheel drives, all these drives and different makes and different things on it. Then you have the seating, what will give support, and how it will move, will it recline, will it tilt, will it, do all of those things, as well as the cushion has 1,000 options. And then you look into head arrays. So what they do is literally split that chair and interchange different things. But you can't make too many changes because it takes you 2 weeks to get used to it. Right? So to put it into perspective, we literally started week 1. Jim said,
Yeah, it
let's
took
this.
about 5 months to pick a
It
wheelchair.
took 5 months.
It sounds crazy, but you think it's not like buying a car because I live in it 12 hours a day. So it's, and we've been very fortunate to have great help. Hi.
Jim, I don't know if it's my imagination, but I thought I've seen something on TV that would give hope for the progress they're making in reconnecting the nerve damage that you're suffering through.
So yeah, I agree, and it's a bit nerve-wracking, pun intended, there. So my injury is really, really minor. It sounds terrible. When I hit the bottom of the ocean, I had severe whiplash. And running up and down your spine are 2 arteries called vertebral arteries. I can't say that word very well. And when under the stress of hitting the bottom of the ocean, one of the arteries split open for a second or 2. And then when the pressure came off, it sealed itself. If it had bled on one side, the blood would have just gone into my system and disappeared, but it bled on the other side, it went into my spine and cut all the nerves. And I was instantly paralyzed. And there's really nothing they can do about it. There's a lot of stem cell research and stuff like that. Right now, all the trials are in India and China, and I'm not going to risk it. I'm a little bit nervous to lose what little I have. So there is a ton of surgery. There's all kinds of equipment, exoskeletons and stuff. It would be awfully difficult for me to do that. I have a pretty good life in Chilliwack. I have a wonderful wife and children and friends and family who, like Margaret, who step up and help me. So I'm afraid of losing that. So I know what you're saying, but I'm pretty nervous. I'm still a new quad too, so I'm only a year in. One of my good friends has been a quad for almost 50 years, so it's amazing his stories compared to mine. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
I found another hand up here a minute ago, did no?
No?
Excuse me, I'll just say one thing. I'd
Sure.
like to say thank you to the Rick Hansen organization and yourself. I had a nephew that was a complete paraplegic. He just passed away last month. And he spent the last 30 years in a chair. But he found that every time he wanted to go anyplace, he could go with the van, but he couldn't get access to the park, couldn't get access to the malls. And that's one thing that you're bringing to everybody's attention is that we don't have enough of these parking spaces for you or access to different places like the mall or grocery stores.
Thank you. Yeah, it is true. Older buildings are not set up for it at all. So it is a difficult, so City Hall here in Chilliwack, I can get in, but it's an old ramp. It's very thin and quite steep, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but that's okay. But the Cottonwood Mall here is excellent. The new leisure center, the cultural center, fantastic. Prospera Center, the arena I can get into really well. So the newer buildings are fantastic. There's curb cuts almost everywhere for me to get in and out. And like I said, I pointed out these two little issues I had, and they had them fixed in a couple of months. So I know what you're saying, and I think the world is getting better. Rick Hansen, when he was in China, wanted to ride his wheelchair on the Great Wall, and they had to carry him up the stairs and get him through. So China saw this, and there's now a handicap access to the Great Wall. So we have friends who are in China, and they've invited us, poor Isabel's going, you're gonna travel again. But we might try to do the Great Wall. That would be a lot of fun.
One of the most amazing things I have seen, and I think others may have seen it too, was Rick Hansen with Rick Mercer bungee jumping off the Capilano Bridge. You see that? Wasn't that something?
I don't think I'll be doing that.
And who went first? Rick went first, and Rick Mercer said, "How do you feel?" And he goes, "I can't feel my legs."
Range of motion, physio exercise, you have to do that every day.
So yeah, I'm very fortunate. Again, there's a program called the Ready Program, and I go to Abbotsford because they have all the equipment for me, and Margaret drives me quite often actually. And I have excellent therapists there, and we work on my arms and legs. And my legs are actually quite strong. I don't have, it's called proprioception, so I don't have any feeling or any feedback. So I can move my legs and feet and a little bit my arms, but if I don't see it, I don't know it's moved. So it sounds strange, but my legs are strong enough. I don't have any balance, so if someone helps me maintain my balance, I can stand up. I have enough energy in my legs. Now, because I don't use my muscles very much, obviously, I tire like very, very quickly. It's quite strange. And I start to get dizzy because my heart's not used to pumping the blood when I stand up anymore. So I really have to be careful. But yeah, I've stood up several times. I can't lift my feet. We've been trying to take a step, but I'm not sure how we'll ever do it. But yeah, so again, we complain about public health, and I know there's issues, but man, the people who work in the health system have been incredible to me. If there's problems, it isn't the people, and everybody from the doctors down to the aides have really reached out and helped me. Isabel says it might be my attitude, and it might be, but boy, I've had very good experience, so I'm just gonna say that about the public health system.
I'd just like to say, you say how great Chilliwack is. My daughter dropped me off when I broke my ankle and I was on crutches. And it was the door that doesn't have an automatic opening.
Yeah.
And there's a dear old soul, a dear old man, and he got to his feet, grabbed his walker, and he came over and opened the door for me.
Yeah. It's amazing, and I have several stories like that. It's going to be my next one on our blog, my quadriplegic life, is how helpful. And I'll say 95% of the world is helpful, and the other 5% are on their phones. People walk into me like, come on guys, I didn't go that fast. And they walk into me, oh, I'm sorry, because then they look up from their phones, it's really quick. And once they see me, they're very, very helpful, but I just throw that out there. Hello, I'm over here. Yeah, so that's just a funny thing. Is that?
That's all the questions we have. Well, I'd just like to say thank you for coming today, Jim and Isabel, and Faith, to share this experience with us. So, thank you very much. Okay, we'll take a 15-minute break now for coffee and come back later to our business meeting. Thank you.
Wonderful.